All right, welcome to Remote Play Gaming Podcast, Ep008. I am one of your hosts, Evan, and I'm here with Mark. And we're excited to get going this week on what we've been playing, some games we've been playing, some the Xbox Partner Preview that we had earlier, I guess last week once this episode goes out, and some Game of the Year predictions, because by the time we get to the next episode, the nominees will be right around that time. So they may or may not be out. But and to kick off with that Game of the Year conversation, Mark, I've got the question of the day for you.
Okay.
So we're going into year 10 of Jeff Keighley's Game of the Awards. Mm-hmm. So kind of taking a look back at the previous 9 winners. We've got Dragon Age Inquisition as the first, then The Witcher 3, Overwatch, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, God of War, Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, The Last of Us Part 2, It Takes Two, and Elden Ring. So, I guess my question there is maybe 2 parts. In one, the first question is, out of those, what would your game of the decade or almost decade be?
I was squirming knowing you were going to ask that.
Yeah.
I just felt it coming.
So what will your game of the year game of the year be? And then GotY, is that what it'd be? GotY. But and then and if there's anything in the last decade, which would pretty much just be like PS4, PS5 generation, and obviously like Xbox One, Xbox Series, and most of the Switch, and possibly a Wii U game that if there's a Wii U game that would squeeze in there. But so that is I'll let you think that through. You got any exciting thoughts on that stuff? But we'll get through the title card here and then follow up.
Awesome. Let's jump. All right, and we're back. So you want to run us through that list again for our question of the day?
Sure.
I'm already torn because one of my favorite games of all time is on here. So
sure. So we got Dragon Age Inquisition, Witcher 3, Overwatch, Breath of the Wild, God of War, Sekiro, The Last of Us Part 2, It Takes Two, and Elden Ring. So first, I'm going to ask, are there any on here that you haven't played?
Yeah, let's go through the list again, and I'll give you a thumbs up, thumbs down.
All right, Dragon Age?
Played it.
Witcher 3?
Played it.
Overwatch?
Of course, played it, yep.
Breath of the Wild?
Yep.
God of War?
Yep.
Sekiro?
I have not played it yet, but I own it.
Okay. Last of Us Part 2?
Of course.
It Takes Two?
I've not played it yet, but it's on Game Pass. Plan to.
And Elden Ring?
I've played it, yes.
Okay, so we're missing Sekiro and It Takes Two. I think they're the only ones you have not played.
Yeah, so I'm just going to DQ those right away just because I don't have the experience. Sure. What a difficult question. You're looking for the best of the best right here.
Yeah.
Okay. Man, the ones that immediately jump up in my mind, you got to think Breath of the Wild, just because it kind of revolutionized the Zelda formula, which was already extremely popular and very well liked and received and successful franchise. It was kind of shocking that they could do that with that game. God of War, similar thing, revitalized a franchise in a whole new way that nobody ever really saw coming. Even the developers themselves, if you watch the documentary, completely shocked, and it was a huge risk, right? They didn't even know if they're going to get it off the ground, and if they did, would people like it? And then it became what it is today. And then you got The Last of Us Part 2 is just absolutely incredible in terms of production and gameplay and story, although controversial at the time. Not for me, but I loved it. Dragon Age, that's digging way back there. Did you play Dragon Age?
I played Dragon Age Origins. So
Okay. So not Inquisition. Yeah. Also
I've
great.
I've played 3 of these games, and the easy choice is on here for me. So it's not a great question for me because Breath of the Wild is probably my favorite game of all time, and Overwatch and It Takes Two are the only other games I've played on this list.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and Overwatch, no offense to Overwatch fans, but it feels like it came and went, right? And we're on Overwatch too. Like, it was really cool and revolutionary at the time, but I just don't think it stacks up against these other games.
Yeah, I was to say Overwatch is definitely an outlier here, just because it's an ongoing multiplayer game, right?
Yeah.
So you say it came and went, right? It came and went in the sense of like that type of conversation, right? Like, but it's probably the longest lasting game in terms of like
staying power.
Overwatch 2, right? So is just which Overwatch 2 is kind of in a bad place right now, but
yeah. All right, so to answer your question, I've got to go Last of Us Part 2. I think that game is simply incredible. The graphic fidelity, the story, the production, the gameplay, it's just over the top. And that was a really hard question, really good question. Because God of War and Breath of the Wild are right behind that. If not like a 1A, 1B, 1C. If you ask me on a different night, I might say differently, but I love that Last of Us game so much that it's one of the few games that I think I would go back and replay that has a good meaty length.
Okay. Yeah. I wasn't sure. I knew you were a big fan of Last of Us, really the whole franchise, right? So, and then, but like also God of War, also Zelda, right? And then I knew you were a pretty big fan of Witcher 3, so I wasn't sure if that was going to fall in there. So then kind of again, the follow up on that, is there any game that was not in this list that you can think of over the last decade that you're just like, oh, this should be there? Maybe that's a harder question to answer. I should have, but especially on the spot, right, to just think of what came out over the last decade.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what you're basically asking, like, essentially what Game of the Year nominee didn't win that you would like to see in here, almost, right? Kind of
and really it didn't even necessarily had to be a Game of the Year nominee for you, right? Like, or for the Game of the Year awards, but it could have been for you. Yeah. And to me, I'm like wondering about, like, there's like some indies, right? Like It Takes Two is really the only like indie game
it's like
has one Game of the
Year,
AA
type, AAA type, right?
Right. And so like, is like, say something like Divinity Original Sin 2 that we've talked about, does that compete with Last of Us Part 2 for you? Or
that's a really good question. I think it should be in the list, so certainly, right? Because it lost to Breath of the Wild that year, but was PC Game of the Year. Does it beat Last of Us for me? No. If you're asking me to pull a game out of the hat that's gonna change my answer to the first question, I don't think I can do it. I don't think there's one out there. But I would say Divinity Original Sin 2. I mean, that's an incredible game that we've both played that should be in that list probably, or at least deserves to be. It's unfortunate.
Right. If we're looking at Game of the Decade nominees, right? Like it came in a year, that in 2017 where there was Breath of the Wild, there was Super Mario Odyssey, there was I'm having a hard time thinking of games that were not Nintendo that year, but
that's fine.
I want to say there's something else in 2017, but that was a pretty good year for games, and I think of like games necessarily that like I dove into and really loved. Like Destiny is a hard game. It's kind of a hard game, like not exactly like Overwatch, but it's like this ongoing game that's like, maybe the initial impact, right, doesn't sit with you like the way like something like a Last of Us will, right? Like you play Last of Us and that just that one experience sits with you forever. But like Destiny was like this long experience that I got so much out of. And then there's games like Celeste or something that I think of too. But no, I just I thought that would get the conversation started, get the tone set for the Game of the Year nominees and stuff that we're going to be discussing here later for this year, which was an insane year for a game. So, Can I
ask you a follow-up question? Just given the season when this comes out, we'll be in that Halloween type time. Would love the Ash Ketchum outfit we've got going on here. I do have a Spider-Man mask. It doesn't exactly fit over the headphones, but that's a little spoiler for what's coming in our discussion.
Oh yeah.
So given the theme, I want to ask you and offer up my opinion as well once you're done. What are maybe 3 to 5 of the best spooky thriller, horror, Halloween type games? Doesn't have to be downright gory. It can be. It can just be like a spooky type thing. What do you have off the top of your head here?
Yeah, so horror is not exactly a genre that I've spent a whole lot of time in video games. I watched a lot of horror movies like back in like high school, early 20s and stuff, but even that I've fallen out of and I don't really watch horror. But I played Resident Evil 5. That's the only Resident Evil game I've played. But there are maybe like the creepy vibe, like narrative games and stuff that I've played, right? Like I've talked about on this podcast, Gone Home and What Remains of Edith Finch are a couple of games that I've played that really have that creepy tone.
I would almost put Oxenfree in there a little bit too.
Yeah,
weirdness going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say for me, that's got to be the top. Like it's almost got like the same. I want to say the same tone as like a Stranger Things. It's different, right? It's not the same as Stranger Things, but to me, like Stranger Things is my favorite show of all time. Oxenfree has got to be one of my favorite, like at least like smaller titles. I would say it's an indie game. By whatever I don't know if Netflix owns that studio now, but yeah. So it's got to be that. Night in the Woods is another one I've played. So I would say I'll give you like. Let's go top 3 here. Oxenfree is number 1 for me.
Okay.
Does Metroid Prime count? That could be creepy, right?
Yeah. Not as much as
can
Metroid
I pick
Dread.
Select mission? Yeah, no, not Metroid Dread for me. But I was say like if I could pick certain missions, or side missions or quests or whatever in a. Fallout 3, that creepy where you're like you go into that simulation and it's like this black and white and you're like this little child murderer.
He plays the kid. Yeah.
You're going through town. Fallout 3 is one of my favorite games of all time, and that mission just stands out so much to me as one of the creepiest things I've ever done in a video game.
Can we pause on that? Can we pause on that? Have you seen the way they did that was like it's still your character model, but they shrunk you down really small. So if you look that up, like a video or article, basically to make you this little kid and give you that perspective, it's still your character model. So if you got into third person somehow, which I don't think they allow in that, it shrunk. Right. You shrunk way down as like a little man, like an ant.
I don't know what sounds scarier or creepier, like seeing like a little 5-year-old kid run around or like this shrunken full-size
power armor,
shrunken grown grown adult that's just reduced. That's weird.
Yeah. Anyway,
I don't know which one would be creepier. Yeah. And then I would say Night in the Woods I really like. Night in the Woods doesn't get as scary as even like something like Oxenfree, but like you have like you go through this dream sequence and stuff like because it's like a cozy like fall type game, but like you have like dreams and stuff, and it definitely has some like creepy tones, right? I mean, just Night in the Woods, the name kind of has like a little bit of a creepy like vibe to it, but it's not like it's more like I don't know, it's not super creepy, but it definitely I would say fits the theme, right?
That spooky Halloween type theme. You're going more of those like I don't want to say like not conspiracy, but just like something weird's going on. You got a weird feeling, absolutely. The goosebumps type of thing. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are a little more versed in the horror genre and as a whole. So I'm definitely gonna bounce this back to you and really get your thoughts on this one.
So you said Resident Evil. I played pretty much all of them, I think. You listed probably the least scary one in 5, very action oriented.
Right.
Resident Evil 7 is definitely in the top 5 for me. That's the one where you're Ethan Winters and you're trying to escape the Baker family and find your partner Maya, I believe. So that one's super super creepy, especially the opening like 20-30 minutes to an hour. You're in the house and it's just weird vibes, man. Not great. Honorable mention in the Resident Evil for me is Resident Evil 3. So when I was a kid playing that at like, I don't know, 10 or 12, some age I should not have been playing this game in. There's the nemesis in that game that's often on the cover of the game, this big monster, and it's like black not trench coat, but like black getup, and he follows you during the game. So you it just adds that pressure, and that's something you don't like, right? When you're getting pushed along or followed. And so you're trying to do something, and this dude busts through the wall or comes walking through, and you hear the stomping, and dude was giving me nightmares. So one night I took out the trash as a kid. I come to go back inside, and my mom had come home from work early, was wearing a black coat, and in my head I was thinking about this game, and I walked into her. I'd started bawling my eyes out because I thought she was the nemesis. I was so scared, and my mom said, "You're not playing that game anymore."
Yeah, no more.
So that was my honorable mention and side story. Silent Hill, definitely up there. That's more, I mean, there's horror, obviously, but creepy, super creepy vibes. Dead Space, which we may talk about here in a little bit, I think. It's getting a little action lately. That one, gory, but scary as well. Some jump scares in there. And then my top all time is Alien Isolation. Did you ever try that out or no?
I jumped it. No, I was just, there was like a horror game or something that I jumped into around that. I think the time that came out, but it was Outlast.
That's like on people's like top 3 lists all time.
Yeah, I played it for like 5 minutes, and I was like, I'm not. I'm good.
Nope, I didn't last. No.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Yeah, Alien Isolation. I've never seen anybody do a game like this. So this is Alien, like the movie Aliens, right? For people listening. And you are like this sole survivor, or you arrive on the ship, if I remember right, and you're trying to figure out what happened to the crew, and the alien is creeping around, and the AI for this game at the time was insanely awesome, right? So it would follow you, and then they had a interaction with the Kinect at the time on the Xbox 360 or even your headset. Wow. So if it heard you talking or making noise, it would come running to where you were, right? So super, super creepy, and you had to just hide in lockers, and it would walk by, and making noises in front of you and stuff. Yeah, so scary.
I gotta watch the Alien movies. I've watched some of Prometheus. I've watched, I think, seen bits and pieces of some of the Alien movies. But like the Alien, and I mean, naturally you think of Predator as well, right? Like, but I've seen more of the Predator series, but that might be a like movie series I have to jump into, and then that will cause me to want to play some Isolation, because I've heard really good things about Isolation as well. So I totally, I was sitting there thinking, I was like, all right, what else is like horror? And I was like, oh, like zombies. And I was like, oh yeah, we played DayZ for a while. And I was like, DayZ I wouldn't put on like the list, right? Like, but a game that just, I don't know how, like, totally forgot about this, Left 4 Dead 2. Right? Like,
yeah, I thought you were going to say Killing Floor.
Oh yeah, Killing Floor is in there too. Yeah. But I almost have to change my answer to, like, Left 4 Dead 2's almost got to be number 1 for me. Good. I think it's right up there with Oxenfree. Again, totally different vibes, right? But man, that's a 1A 1B for me. Yeah. I'll say Oxenfree, I think, is for me, is like, when I think of like which game do I like more, I would say it's Oxenfree. But man, Left 4 Dead 2 and the original Left 4 Dead just have so many good memories for me. Yeah. So I'm gonna say Left 4 Dead 2 is number 2 for me, and then but
awesome.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many good ones. So yeah, listeners out there, if you've got any, drop them into preferably the Discord. We can get an ongoing discussion, or even the comments of the video or the episode, wherever you're listening.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, what's up next for us?
Yeah, next we have got what we've been playing, right? So, Mark, I'm just going to go ahead and discuss what we've been playing. I think you've got a graphic to throw up there. So, you've been playing a little bit of Super Mario Wonder. I've been playing a little bit of Super Mario 3D World. And and I've been playing Eastward. I jumped into my first Castlevania game, Castlevania Aria of Sorrow on the Analog Pocket here. Nice. So I got one of the transparent models of the Analog Pocket, and that was the game I decided to jump into. And I've played some Titanfall 2 and some Halo Infinite. with the new season and the new changes here, and you have been playing another big one, Spider-Man 2. So we're gonna start with a big one with you and finish with a big one with you, and then it looks like I am filling a lot of gaps in between there, with not so notable titles. But so you want to kick the conversation off with Mario Wonder?
Yeah, sounds good. Little indie game from a company called Nintendo. Wowie Zowie, Super Mario Brothers Wonder. That's like their new thing, right? Like he says it in the game and stuff too.
Like, where did this come from? Has Mario ever said Wowie Zowie?
I was racking my brain driving today because I was listening to a YouTube video and somebody was talking about a tweet, and the tweet said Wowie Zowie, and I'm like, where is this from? Like, when did this become a thing?
Yeah. Like, it feels like right as something Mario has said, but like also I'm like, I don't think I've ever heard Mario say Wowie Zowie before. Like, it's just.
Yeah, you're like, it tracks, but...
Right. Yeah. Charles Martinet just refused to ever say it, and they're like, all right, Kevin, we've got a line we've been trying to get Charles to say for the last 25 years. Wowie Zowie.
Yeah.
That's what got him the job, right?
Yeah, it's going to be a big hit. So Super Mario Brothers Wonder game is really, really good. I've played up through the first castle, which is not much, but keep in mind this game you can beat in apparently 6 to 7 hours. Not some massive game.
Okay, yeah.
Really enjoy it. The levels are really well designed, so you kind of have 2 levels within each level, right? Because once you grab a Wonder Flower, the level interaction changes, and you're collecting these purple coins that you can see on the screen, or what's called these Wonder Seeds, and that's what unlocks certain things. So like when you go to the castle, you have to have so many Wonder Seeds to be able to enter the castle, and they're fairly easy to collect, right? Like you're gonna for sure get one in each level. And then there's usually at least one, if not another, hidden within the Wonder Flower part of the level. So, and you can go replay them and get them. But no, it's really good. I've only played as the Mario character. I did have my daughter play with me. She played 2 levels as a Yoshi, and she liked it, but she's still getting used to it. Graphically awesome, for this type of game. The gameplay is really good. It's very unique, awesome twist. I have heard a lot of other podcasts and reviews call this like quintessential, like the best Mario in terms of 2D, right? Platforming, like how could they get any better than this? And I may agree with part of that, like how could they get any better than this? But also at the same time, I'm playing this, I'm just not feeling blown away. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And I've played all sorts of 2D Marios and other 2D platformers. Maybe that just speaks to how good Nintendo is. Like I'm so used to it. Does that sound right? You know what I mean? Like, okay, yeah, of course it's good. Like, I'm not blown away as, like, this is the best 2D Mario ever, but maybe it's because it's in such a high class in general. The Mario games are just that good when you think about 2D platforming. So, what are your thoughts on, what you've seen of this game so far, and are you itching to pick it up, or what I just told you, is it making you pause, or what do you think?
Yeah, so I've been texting you a little bit, right? Like I was just like, oh man, like I just see a post pop up on Reddit, or you say something, or some podcast I'm listening to, like they're talking about it, and I'm just like, like you said, they're talking. It's the conversation is that this is among the top for Super Mario, rather 2D Super Mario Bros. Game. So it's just like, oh man, and it's like I do love a good 2D platformer, usually in a different type of style than what we typically get from Mario, but like all the wackiness you get from these Wonder Flowers and stuff like that, I'm like, that to me mixes it up in a way that is a lot more appealing to me than, we've been stuck in this, and maybe that's, part of what makes Super Mario Wonder feel so good, is that new Super Mario Bros. Has felt so samey for so long that it's just like this, finally we get to taste something new, right? Like, and or at least a little bit different than what Mario has been for the last decade. And this might be the first time we're talking about a 2D Mario in the Game of the Year conversation. Since the Game of the Years, right? Like, there wasn't any conversation. Nobody's talking about new Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe or new Super Mario Bros. 1 and 2. I mean, if any 2D Mario game deserves any kind of conversation, it's Mario Maker, right? Like, and it's like,
no.
And that's because you're getting user generated content that's creating something just different than what Mario has been. So for Nintendo to actually come out and provide something different, something new for Mario, to me, that's exciting. Honestly, the big thing for me is just like, there's an appeal to this whole like 6 or 7 hour game that I'm like, oh, okay, I can go in there and I can get the experience, and it sounds like it's just an insane amount of fun. And I love some, like, it sounds like later maybe you'll start to see it after you get past the first world, right? You said you're on the first world. There's only so much game there, but maybe it really opens up in the second, third world or something like that, right? And that's where it really starts to shine. But or at least that's what I was wondering when you were saying that.
Yep.
So so I think for me to spend $60 or even justify using my voucher on that, I'm looking at the list of games. So I have a voucher sitting out there or whatever from, and I'm just like, well, I kind of want this physically, and I kind of want to use this voucher on maybe another game or something. Like, I'm looking at Princess Peach. So we've got Super Mario RPG coming. Was it Another Code Recollection or whatever?
Yeah.
Recollection, the remake of those DS games. Those are actually a part of the voucher program. I just noticed.
Oh, wow.
So
That's interesting.
Yeah. So I was just like, oh, maybe one of these games ends up being what I grab. And I'm holding out. I'm like, maybe Metroid Prime 4 will come out before May, whatever, before my voucher expires, and I can use it on that, right? But no, I think I'll pick this up. I think Mario Day in March, or we'll get it for the kids for Christmas or something like that.
Yeah.
The kids for Christmas, right? Quote unquote. But
Dad tax. Your gift is my gift.
I'm a lot more. I've only gotten more excited about this game as it's gone on. It was announced, and I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. Like, I'm fine on Super Mario games, on the 2D Mario games, but the more I've seen, the more I'm excited, and I'm like, maybe this does what 2D Mario, what Mario Odyssey did for me in 3D Mario, because I've never really been a Mario fan, 2D or 3D, up until Mario Odyssey, and I was like, oh, maybe I do like Mario games, right? Like, Super Mario Brothers is my favorite 2D Mario, and was my favorite Mario game prior to Mario Odyssey.
Right. So you're trending positive overall on this.
Yeah, the hard thing for me, again, is like the $60 price tag for a 6-hour game, which maybe we'll talk a little bit here for another game that is $10 more but gives you twice as much gameplay that has gotten some flack where this hasn't. And maybe like I said, once we get to Spider-Man, maybe we'll talk about it a little more. But to me, like, I can have a really, really good experience for $60 that gives me 10, 12, 15 hours of game, and it's not the best way to look, I don't think, it's spent like at buying a game, but when it gets to be that few of hours of content, it's just like, it makes me want to think about it a little bit.
Yeah, you're actually making me feel worse about my purchase. I use my voucher on this.
No. I mean, but it's got what, a 92 or 93 on Metacritic right now?
Yeah, so. I mean, it's getting incredible reviews, and it definitely deserves it from what I've played so far. I mean, it's your standard Mario thing, right? The story's not going to blow you away, but the gameplay is good. It is Mario at its peak with a very unique twist on it. And there's just supposedly some challenging levels. I played one, so they're star ranked, like, oh, it's a 1-star difficulty. I played a 4-star difficulty one that was like off the beaten path. And I did have to play it a few times, like 3 or 4 times, to be like, oh, okay, I get it, and I need to jump here at this moment, and yada yada. So it wasn't bad.
Okay, yeah, that's it sounds more exciting than So I've been playing Mario 3D World. We'll transition if we're ready to transition into that. We can still talk about it, but something about the isometric I guess that's what I'd call it, right? It's kind of isometric, but it's you can shift the camera angle a little bit, but for a platformer, to me, I'm not sure that I'm a huge fan. I either want it to be a full-on 3D platformer where I'm using 3D controls, or I want it to be a 2D platformer, because like this in between, at least for me, is not just like, my brain is just like not clicked at points. Sometimes it feels really good, and I'm enjoying the game, and I think I don't think it's a super long game. Again, Mario games aren't typically like super long games. I think it's like a 10-hour game or something like that, so I'm probably going to chip away at it, because there is fun to be had in the game, and then I really want to I don't know if I have to beat the 3D world to play Bowser's Fury, but like Bowser's Fury is something I'm going to beat it,
really
and then I'll
good.
play Bowser's Fury is supposed to be awesome, right?
Yeah, so, I haven't played that.
yeah, so I'm really looking forward to getting to that, but I'm like making myself, like I said, I don't know if I have to beat it or not, but I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna beat 3D World before I go to Bowser's Fury.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've been having fun with that. Like I said, it's I think I'm more excited about the idea of Mario Wonder than I've been about 3D World. I've heard good things about 3D World, and I think you originally played it on the Wii U, right?
Yep. Yeah, we ripped through that in a weekend with my wife and her brothers. Like, it was a ton of fun. Especially love the cat suit, obviously. Like, that's a huge draw.
Yeah.
But speaking on the levels and stuff and like that changing, I thought it was pretty well done for the most part from what I remember. There's a couple times I think I was like, it didn't click for me, but more times than not, we really liked it.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I just, on occasion, I feel like, like I feel like I'm moving in a 2D space and then I miss a platform because I'm like like the depth is off or something like that. I'm like, oh, like it's a little jarring. It kind of throws me out of it a little bit. And then I'm like, it's, it's not terrible. Like I said, I still have, there's a lot of fun and it's not like it's ruining the enjoyment for the game for me or anything like that. But some similar, actually, Crash Bandicoot, I feel like I've had, which is it's not quite the same perspective, but Crash Bandicoot is a game that
it'll switch.
Yeah, and that I had trouble like getting a hold of, or getting the concept or getting the perspective correct or whatever, to where and that has, I think, like caused me to put the game down at times to where I've never actually gotten through a Crash game. I've played them several times, but yeah, that's
so speaking of shorter games, I think the other one you've been playing as well is Titanfall 2.
Yeah, so I was playing with Titanfall 2 like off and on for a little bit like this year, and it's a big media game on as far as space storage space is concerned on the Xbox Series X. It was sitting at like 70 gigs, and I'm like, okay, this is supposed to be like a 6-hour game, and I've just kept it on here. I'm like, I need to get rid. I'm not going to jump into the multiplayer, although I think there's been some updates to it soon or whatever. But it's like, another game on here, Halo Infinite is the multiplayer shooter I'm going to be playing right now. So I was like, I'm gonna just I beat Eastward last night, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But like, and I was sitting there, I was like, all right, I'm just gonna try to get Titanfall 2 just so I can get the 70 gigs back on my Xbox hard drive.
You're beating it.
I'm
for
just gonna
space.
jump in and try to chip away. Yeah, but what a motivation to play a game, right? Oh, I need the storage space. But no, I jumped into Titanfall 2 last night, and I was just like, when I looked at like my progress on the Xbox app or whatever, it said I was 56% through the campaign, and I was like, I'm like this is supposed to be a 6-hour game. I'm almost 5 hours into this game. How am I only 56%? Like, I play games pretty slowly sometimes, but like,
but you can't even go off the beaten path of this game.
Right. You can only go so far astray in Titanfall 2 that I was just like, how am I this far behind? Right. Yeah. And then, so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to look at the series of missions. I beat a mission last night. And I was like, I'm just going to look at the list of missions and see how many more missions I have left.
Yeah.
And then I'm like I look at the mission I'm on, and I was like, this is the last mission. And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to stay up a little bit later, and I'm just going to go ahead and crank this out. So, coming away from it, to me, honestly, the story, like, it seemed like there was a cool story there. I have a hard time following stories and like first person shooters and stuff. Even like Halo, when I'm playing it, like there's enough lore around Halo that like the conversation outside of playing the game that it's like I'm relatively in tune with the story, but even I couldn't tell you the story of Halo.
You're like, I'm just here to kill aliens.
That's right, and I enjoy doing it, right? And it was, it's similar to Titanfall. Like, there's cool stuff happening, but really, like, for a first person shooter, there's some pretty cool platforming in Titanfall 2.
That's a good point.
So like, and really the last mission has some awesome stuff that you do. And the final mission did have this like epic feeling that like, it's not the same as like, you get those Warthog missions at the end of Halo games a lot. Right. And, but it just like, it's this grand sense of, finishing the game, and you're all the stuff that you've been doing in the game, for the 5 or 6 hours up to that point, it's just kind of like throwing it in there, and they make you feel super overpowered, right? Like you're like, oh yeah, like I'm here, I've gotten to this point, and I'm just like so ready to roll. That was really cool. And again, so like the gameplay is so smooth in that, right? Like the gunplay is good, the platforming's good, like really everything about playing that game was a lot of fun. It didn't overstay its welcome, right? Like it left you saying like, okay, like I could have actually played a little more, and that's really, I think, a good place for a game to sit, right? Like is like when you finish it, you're like, but I want more. And then that's what gets you to get a sequel that maybe we'll get for Titanfall at some point, right? That's been hitting the rumor mill a little bit more lately, but
delayed
we'll
sequel
see.
by years and years.
Yeah. But no, Titanfall 2, really glad I played it. It was, it's such an easy game to recommend, since especially if you have Game Pass, right? Or Game Pass Ultimate, right? Because it's on EA Play, or PC Game Pass or whatever. Like going out there, it's fun gameplay. It's still, to me, it holds up just fine. It's not like an ancient game, but it's not exactly a newer game, right? So, but it's like 6 hours, like you have a blast in 6 hours, and then you can find out if it's for you in the first hour, right? Like you're like, am I going to enjoy this? And if you're not, you can either drop it, or if you're just like, maybe, then it's like, you only got 6 hours and you'll be done with it. But yeah,
I'll say really quick, if you're a listener that's maybe going to pick this up, the story sounds like it fell on deaf ears for you, so to speak, but for coming from somebody that does like stories, this is an incredible story jam-packed in 6 hours, and like really heartfelt, and has some emotion there in the final mission that you were talking about. So if you're somebody that does like story stuff, this is a good bite-sized, awesome story in a 6 hour window.
Yeah. That's what I've heard, right? And you're definitely like that. You love a good gameplay tied to a good story. And for me, like you said, like it just, like it has to be a narrative game, like, because I do like story-based games, but the game has to be focused. Like that has to be the game, right? Is the story?
Yeah, you're not doing multiple things at once, right? You're like, if I'm doing a story game, we're doing a story game. If I'm doing a shooting game, I'm killing aliens. Like,
that's right. Like the story, it can exist, right? Like, and I'm sure it helps somewhere in my brain, but like I don't really, like I said, it falls on deaf ears, and like the setting and the theme and stuff like that has an impact. But yeah, I have a hard time following a story when I'm too focused on like shooting things there, because I don't know, I can't hardly walk and talk at the same time. So
Now, have you played Apex at all? You played Apex.
I played a little bit of Apex. I would say out of the battle royale craze, that was probably the one that I most enjoyed.
Yeah. Did you, now playing Titanfall 2, can you see where that game led to Apex, and the controls and the boosting, like dodging to the side?
Yeah, and that's probably what I really liked about Apex, right? Is the maneuverability and everything like that. It feels smooth. It feels it just feels really good, right? It feels fun.
They have a really good lockdown on that.
I think the controls are tight, and the actual movement is fun to do. So
I like that lore too, that those are tied together in the same universe. And in real life, I believe it was like their next Titanfall game, maybe, whether it was an offshoot or whatever, but that ultimately evolved into Apex.
Right.
Yeah,
that's good. So I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the other game I beat last night, which is Eastward, and I'm gonna have very compete, like, so my feelings for Titanfall, I don't want to say you want to flip them for Eastward, because I've been talking about Eastward really for several episodes throughout this podcast, right? And since we started this podcast, and I've had glowing things to say about it. I took about almost 35 hours to beat Eastward, which is very unlike Titanfall 2, right?
I was gonna say, I need to look up how long to beat while you're talking. Go ahead.
And I did a bit of the side content, and I was trying to do almost like complete it as I played through, but I hit a point where I was just like, this game overstayed its welcome for me. It brings a ton of charm. There's a world that I would love to like that I loved being in, and I almost wanted to dive into the world more than the game. So combat and controls in this game, complete opposite of what I was just talking about Titanfall 2. The combat is awful. Some of the worst I've ever played in gaming.
Really?
It's that bad. So like none of the fights that I've won throughout the game, like, and it was just like I got to the final boss last night and I'm like, oh, this is finally a little bit satisfying. And then like the aggro phase hit and I was just like, it's back to being terrible. And really like, so, and I think what really like a way to kind of articulate that is when I win a fight after playing it over and over and over again, wanting to break my controller, and I finally win that fight, right?
Oh.
It's okay to have that fury and that infuriation at losing over and over again. Is if when you finally beat that fight, you're like, yes, I did it. I got better, right? Like this is what the whole Souls genre, right?
Yeah,
the Souls like genre thrives on.
Yeah.
I win a fight and I don't feel like it's because I got better. I feel like it was just like, well, I happened to get lucky that time.
Oh.
And it's just like, I want to feel good at least if I'm going to feel that bad, that long, that many times after losing fights, I want to feel good when I finally win it. And I didn't. And it was just like, oh, like it wasn't like, oh, I'm finally getting better at the timing of these attacks. And I'm finally getting, like it was, I never had that sense of, it's just like the combat is clunky. It doesn't like the movement of your character and the enemies is not very like it doesn't feel good. And so and I think that honestly like that really, I mean that probably brings it from like an A tier game to like maybe a C tier game for me.
Oh, wow.
That and just the fact that it went on so long. It's a game that like you're like, and again, the combat probably has some impact on that, but it's just like there was a lot of stuff that like you had to do, like you kind of had like there's like some parts of the game where it's like kind of Groundhog Day type stuff, and like it doesn't allow you to like speed through like tedious parts, even though like you have to redo the same thing. And it's like, oh, there's a clever way to tell a story with having to redo things like that, right? Like that are tied to the story. But it's like even to save the game, right? You go to this like old refrigerator that's kind of like the setting, the charm, the world, really cool. Like this refrigerator has like a TV connected to it, and it's like sentient, and it's like it has like these like philosophical quotes to you on like memories, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's fun to read the first time, but it's like it's dialogue that you have to like hit A
just to save the game.
I want to read it the first time, but just to save the game.
Oh,
and
no.
And you have to do it every time. And it's just like, okay, like I get it. I read it the first time. I don't want to read it 30 more times. And like, each fridge has a different saying, and it's like, I want to read it the first time, and then I just want to save it anytime after that. Right. Yeah. And there's a lot of that in the game, right? Not just the fridge. That's just like the one example that sticks out, but there's a lot of like stuff that you like, sequences you might have to go through multiple times that you're like, okay, like I've seen this the first time. I don't want to have to go through this again and again and
That's
again.
a big
and have
sin
to go
in
through
gaming.
The full. Yeah,
Big
absolutely.
sin.
And it's like, once I see it, I should be able to skip or fast forward or have a condensed version of that sequence, right?
That interaction, yeah.
So of that interaction. So it's like I almost don't know if I can recommend this game for anybody, right? Like it just be like, it's as much as I've been talking, like I was just like, I kind of like this last week and kind of like hit that point where it's like again, it doesn't.
The charm wore off, right? And you started to see
a game should end with you wanting more, not with you like, finally I've gotten this over with, right?
Yeah.
Like if you feel like I've, and it's just like the finally I've gotten this over with probably happened for me at 24 hours. And then I had another 11 hours after that, 11 hours after that. You played
35?
Yeah, about 35 hours.
How long to beat says completionist 29.5. So that tracks. Like you're a little, you like to, you like to bask in it and take it in. So that's fine.
Yeah, and I did a lot, and it's just like it's tough for me because like I was looking at it and I was like, there's a lot of achievements because I'm only at like maybe 400 or something like that out of 1,000 on the gamer score for it. Mm-hmm. There's probably 300-400 gamer score that I'm like this close to, like, I'm just like, I have a couple tiny little things that I maybe missed or whatever and didn't do. Another thing that's challenging with this game is like, if you do want to complete it, there's no going back. Like and there's a lot, like the world changes and stuff, which is cool, right? Going through the game and stuff. But like, I can't go back to, I think of like games like Hi-Fi Rush and Hellblade are games I beat earlier this year that it's like, oh, if you want to complete the gamer score on this, you can go back and revisit these areas to kind of get those things you
or
miss,
replay
right?
a
Like,
mission, for example, or something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't really, unless I just missed it. I deleted the game pretty quick again because I was like, all right, finally done with this. Boom, get it out. It like and a
glowing recommendation.
Yeah, right. It's a shame because it's just like, it's so. I was so excited to play this game. I love the intro sequence. I love the world that they've created, and it's interesting. We talked to they have like the Stardew Valley DLC kind of type DLC that's coming out at some point, and I was like thinking about it, and I was like, I almost am more interested in that, but I was like, if that unless they do something to revisit the combat and give you some quality of life improvements on that, like I don't know, but like because I love the world, so I'm like a Stardew Valley type game inside this world sounds more appealing to me than the game itself that I just played. Just because like
that's not a good
like
thing if you're saying that. That's not a good thing.
No, right. Like this game should have been a different game. Like great world, terrible game. Great charm.
So what's your ranking for this? So I mean, you've played it, so this is a pretty good review. I think you've gone over
sure.
all over it. So what do you think is your actual tier rating?
Yeah, I mean, I think a C tier. Honestly, if you're gonna play this game to beat it, C tier is generous. I'm gonna give it a C.
What did you think it was going into it? Like, you obviously, there's a lot of charm. I watched the opening cutscene. You asked me to watch it. It was pretty cool. I'm thinking, all right, man, maybe this game's pretty good.
Yeah.
What did you think it was going to be?
Really cool, like 90s dystopian world. Dystopian post-apocalyptic, almost post-apocalyptic. I don't know. And it's like, and there is like a cool story somewhere in there, right? Like, and it talks about time, and there's maybe it's like some of the stuff is like, okay, you think you're clever, but you're not. But I'm sorry, what was the question?
I want you to say what do you picked up the game, you played it for like, I don't know,
an hour.
Yeah. What did you think it was going to be? You're like, oh, this is an S tier game, A tier.
I would say 5 hours in, I'm like, yeah, A tier. I would say the combat stuff, right, was noticeable really pretty early on, but I'm like, all right, it's not too bad. The further I got into the game, the worse it became because the combat was getting harder. So it's like early on, like the combat just wasn't hard, so it's just like whatever, I can just muscle through it, not a big deal. But as like the enemies got harder and the combat was just still clunky and not intuitive, and you didn't feel like there was like a good way to get better, and that to me was just like, it got worse and worse. So early on in the game, like I was like, all right, if I can continue to overlook the combat this way, I was probably looking at an A. I would say maybe not quite an S tier, just because it did have that shortcoming even the memories and stuff. Like there's a couple things that it's just like, okay, this is gonna get old fast. But if they could have condensed that entire game into a 12-hour experience, it might have been an A tier game, honestly.
Yeah.
Like,
so from A down to C, you're thinking, and C's generous. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, they really absolutely sold you on the upfront.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's just like, and it was hard. It's hard for me to like, okay, I'm 20 hours into this game. I've got to keep playing it, right? Yeah. Like I've got to be close. It's supposed to be a 25-hour game to complete. I'm not doing the completionist run, so I'm not going to hit that 29 hours, right? So it's like, I've got to be not too far ahead. And it was like, I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, I've still got like half of the chapters to go. I was like, maybe they get shorter as you go on, because there was some of the, and they did a little bit, but like, yeah, it was, yeah.
C tier. All right, let's go on. What do you got next and what we played?
Castlevania Aria of Sorrow. So, I got my analog pocket. Really excited to get that. I've wanted an analog pocket since I discovered it like 5 years ago, and they came out with those transparent colors. Finally set me over the edge. I got this cool orange one. Love it. Honestly, analog pocket. Real quick impressions. Incredible. I love it. So
that's awesome.
And so, I was looking, for a game to play, and like, I was just like, you know what? I've never played a Castlevania game. Best Castlevania game on Game Boy Advance. Let's look at that. Aria of Sorrow. Cool. Let's play it. And I started out, and I'm like, man, I really should have played a Castlevania game before this. I'm probably 4 hours into it. and I'm having a blast with it. Honestly, like it's
Dude,
like I don't
so
feel
good.
Yeah, I played I've played some Super Metroid, even a little bit of the original Metroid. Played some Metroid Fusion like back in the day and stuff. And like the Metroid games, some of the stuff didn't click with me. Some of the puzzles there, like I remember Metroid Fusion specifically was what I think the first experience I had with Metroid. And there was like a thing where it's just like you were just expected to shoot your missile at a certain spot on the floor or something, something really weird that like there wasn't like an indicator like in Zelda games, right? Like you have something like there's a little crack in the wall that says place a bomb here. Like there's visual cues. There wasn't really a visual cue for that, and I was just like, why would I know that? Like again, back to like, it doesn't feel like I figured this out. It feels like I just got lucky.
Yeah. So that turned you off from Metroidvania style games. So you just thought. Man, I guess Castlevania's not for me. You're like, that's what you're thinking.
Yeah, so I never had any reason, right? Like Castlevania's been tied to Metroid for so long because they created a genre like those franchises early on, in the 90s, 80s, late 80s, early 90s, whatever it was. But so yeah, and there's a reason, right? Like, because they are the same style of game, but they are different games, and it's probably why it's called Metroidvania, not just Metroid-like or Castlevania-like, right? So
it seems so obvious in hindsight.
Right. And so, like, and recently, the last like 5 years or so, I've fallen in love with some Metroidvanias that have like caused me to like, Yoku's Island Express really, I think, was what got me into the genre. It had like that's a charm
that's something you don't hear every day.
Yeah, right. So I was like, oh, this looks like this might be a more of an appealing style of game for me. If I like this game, I might like, maybe I will look into some other Metroidvanias. Then I played some Hollow Knight. I played like 25 hours or something like that of Hollow Knight.
Yep.
Actually, absolutely had a blast with that. I never finished it, but like, it's just hard to jump back into after like stepping away for a long time. But because just knowing like But anyway, Ori and the Blind Forest, Will of the Wisps, right? Like,
love so those games. Played several, but maybe weren't up front in your face Metroidvania, and you've liked them and you've gotten this taste over time, and you're like, oh yeah, I kind of do like I do like mustard, and I never knew that.
Yeah, exactly.
So Aria Sorrow,
maybe I should.
Your impressions?
Yeah, so Aria Sorrow, great game. I love like the way that you defeat so many enemies, and you kind of acquire their like souls, and you kind of get like a power based on that. Really like a pretty cool mechanic. I don't understand, like I level up and I'm like, what does leveling up do for me? I don't understand. Like I'm used to like if I level up, I pick a perk or I get better at certain skills, and like maybe I do in the background and I'm just not noticing it. But like acquiring the souls or whatever it is, and getting those powers, acquiring different weapons. I kept acquiring for a while. I kept acquiring weapons, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna try to move to this now. No, I'm gonna move to this now, and that's a good feeling, right? Like, because you're not just using the same thing over and over again and acquiring stuff, and you're like, I'm not gonna use it. I've got the whip sword now, and like I have some more powerful weapons, but like the whip sword with its speed and its reach and its strength. Right? Yeah, I'm just like, this is in Castlevania. I think of a whip, right? Like I watched the first anime that came out on Netflix, and I'm watching through Nocturne right now, and like like whips like seems like such a staple.
Got the whips,
yeah. Smash Brothers, right? Like I've played with like as Richter and whatever the other one.
Is it Alucard in there, or is it somebody else?
No, it's somebody else. But again, I'm used to that. That whip seems like such a staple for Castlevania. So, and it feels good. It feels good using that thing in the game. There's some things that show a little bit of age in the game, but totally easily to overlook without like how cool like the mechanic, like the way you again acquire the souls, discover new things and stuff. There's a really good sense of progression in the game, and it just keeps me going. I'm unlocking the map. I mean, I think in a Metroidvania, a good map system is really key.
It's critical,
which is funny because I think Metroid Prime has a terrible map system, but I don't know how, like it was their first real navigation into trying to do a Metroidvania map in 3D, and at least Nintendo and Retro doing that, but
plus who doesn't love whooping on vampires and stuff, you know what I mean? Different monsters, taking them out, you feel powerful, feel awesome. So that's cool. So
yeah,
then
maybe this will be in my Halloween conversation. My favorite, Halloween theme
Next
type
year.
of games, right? Vampires are Halloweeny.
Yeah.
Halloweeny.
Yeah, so next up for you be Symphony of the Night after this one, the GOAT.
I think so. Yeah,
Castlevania
I'm
game.
like, yeah, I'm playing this. I was like, I've got to play Symphony of the Night now, right? Like that's the game. That's the game, and that's a 2D game, right? So, yeah. So I'm like, that's obvious. That's the obvious next step in my Castlevania experience, just because that is widely considered the greatest Castlevania game, and it's almost like no contest, right? Like, when you think of some like all-time franchises, it's like there's like debate especially now between like Breath of the Wild and Ocarina of Time and Tears of the Kingdom,
Halo 2,
Link
Halo
to the
3,
Past, right? Like it seems like Symphony of the Night, there's no contest.
It's like this is the best ever. If you like the like power system thing where you get those abilities, you're gonna love the card stuff and Symphony of the Night. That game is just super incredible.
So yeah, I'm gonna move along here. I spent way more time talking about some of the games that than I expected to.
Yeah, I've only got 2 minutes now.
Yeah. I'm gonna play more Halo Infinite. I just want to say, like, I enjoyed what I played. I realized how terrible I am at competitive shooters right now. Like how rusty I am. I'm just gonna say rusty.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep jumping in and playing some more Halo Infinite, and I'll probably get a little bit better. But Halo Infinite's good. I mean, if you're a Halo fan, it's a good time to jump back in. Let's move on to Spider-Man.
Okay. Quick plug for Baldur's Gate, because I did play that a little bit. I got up to Act 3, so 90-ish hours took me to Act 3. Game's incredible. We'll talk about it later in this episode. I love that there's essentially 3 full games or more within a game, considering Act 1, 2, and 3. If you're going by Mario standards and it's a 7-hour per game, you're getting a lot of bang for buck. But yeah, we can jump into Spider-Man 2. Played the first one, loved it. Played Miles Morales, loved it. Played the remaster just to play it. My dad gave me a key from a friend that got it, so I had it for free. Played it again, loved it. Spider-Man 2 goes above and beyond that in all the right ways. There's a couple of spots where it may like fall short. And that's mainly in like the open world, and I think a lot of reviews are saying this, right? So they didn't really evolve their open world. It's still that like checklist style, like, oh hey, there's 10 things of this style to collect, there's 8 of these puzzles around the world, here they are littered around the map with an icon. It feels bad. It doesn't feel bad, but you've played Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, and that open world feels good, that sense of exploration, and that's just not the approach they go with here, right? And so again, it doesn't feel bad. It's just different and almost like a step back or stuck in time. So that's kind of the negative I have on the game. But other than that, I mean, this is PS5 console power in all its glory. Graphically, they made the city feel so much more live. If you see side by side from the old game or remember playing it, there was like, a few cars in the street and a few people. Now it's just bustling city, all sorts of different cars and people and things going on, conversations going on, and you can zip through the city super fast. So the web swinging has somehow been improved on in this game. I don't know how they did that because it was already incredible. And then they added the web wings so you can fly, you can fly out. And there's not, the web wings doesn't overshadow the swinging, right? Because the swinging is Spider-Man, but the web wings augment it and lift it up in a way, right? They're the best wingman, if you will.
So do you like combine the...
Yeah, so you'll be
mechanics,
you're going to be swinging through, and then you'll pop up high, and then you'll open the web wings to glide to get a little farther. And it's got like you can dive and then come up a little bit. You can't web wing forever, right? You're gliding. You're not a flyer. Sure. You're not flapping. But then there's these wind tunnels in town and like over the water into the different boroughs. That if you get in them, they're like these rings, and if you stay in it, it speed boosts you along, and then you can pop out and get more distance. So traversal. Super awesome. You unlock.
So I'm gonna ask you,
yeah,
on that real quick. Like to me, like you mentioned Tears of the Kingdom, so making me think about Zelda a little bit. But like Tears of the Kingdom really expanded on what the glider could do for paragliding, could do for you for traversal across the map. Do you think the web wings kind of evolved the Spider-Man traversal like in a similar way? Like, is that what you
100%?
Right? Like,
100%.
Okay.
Yep. So if that's what that's your frame of reference, totally that.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Cool.
So, combat wise, this is like that same style of like beat 'em up combos in the air, throw them down. It feels better than ever. They've added a lot of new cool abilities. You're able to play as Miles or Peter. The story, top notch story. I think I liked it better than the other two games. A couple of times it's kind of predictable, but they put it all together so well. If you're a Spider-Man, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. If you're a Spider-Man fan, this is quintessential Spider-Man story. They take some different heroes and villains and change their origins up a little bit, like many comic things do, like the MCU or whatever. Take a little bit of this, put our spin on it, and they do it so masterfully in this. No secret that Venom is a big character in this. Incredible. The voice acting, I cannot remember the guy that does it, and forgive me because I did know it, but he does amazing. They did absolute justice to Venom in this. There is, I'm just going to come out and say this, there is one of the best video game levels I've played in a long time, if not ever, in this game. There's one level in particular, and if you're somebody who's played this game already and played through, you absolutely know which one I'm talking about. So good. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but you gotta play this game when you get a chance to play it. You have any other burning questions in your mind about this, or I give it kind of a rating?
Man. It's just making me think about how insane you were just talking about. Like, I've been playing some Baldurs Gate, one of the the greatest, possibly the game we'll be talking about later. Again, Spider-Man, another game. Like, how many just hit after hit are we getting this year? It just kind of has me thinking about that. So do you think I need to start? So like right now the Spider-Man games are on sale on Steam. And they're all deck verified. Eventually that's kind of the way I want to play these games. I try not to add to my Steam library unless it's a game I'm about to go play. Although because of the Discord, somebody from the Discord recommended Halls of Torment, and it was $4 on the current Steam sale. So I was like, I mean, I'm just gonna go. Yeah, it's such an easy grab. Miles Morales is like $30. Spider-Man, the first Spider-Man is like $34 or something like that. Do you think, like, I mean, can I get the Spider-Man experience? The obviously, this is probably the best Spider-Man experience. Do I need to experience the first two to really get? I mean, I don't even say get the most out of it, but to get 90% of the experience, do I need to play the first two, or is like playing Spider-Man 2? I'm gonna get the consolidated like best complete Spider-Man experience.
Yeah, that's a great question. Gameplay wise, Spider-Man 2 is just leaps and bounds better than the other ones, but that doesn't mean the other ones were bad. They were already super good. Story wise, at the beginning of this game, there is a button on the main menu, which I love. This is catch me up on the story. So it runs you through the major story beats and cutscenes from Spider-Man and Spider-Man Miles Morales, which is awesome for somebody like you or like me. I even watched it, just said, all right, yeah, show it to me again, even though I've played these. But that being said, if you play the other ones, the story's going to hit that much harder. But for you, maybe it won't. So
I was just gonna say, like, the catch up on Spider-Man or whatever you just said. Like, to me, that sounds like I would probably get more out of watching that than I would from the story and playing the games, right? Like, because again, I don't get much from the story as I'm playing. I mean, I'm sure there's a part of the experience, right? That it's like just the progression of the gameplay and everything, and seeing the world and experiencing the world, right? Like, and seeing how that evolves. I'm sure there's value, but I'm like, part of me is just kind of like, maybe I just wait for Spider-Man 2 to come. And I don't know if this will get deck verified or not. It's like at some point these games on the PS5 that are getting moved over to Steam, stop becoming deck verified because the Steam Deck, but like maybe the Steam Deck 2 or whatever, eventually I'll upgrade handheld PC gaming, and I'm sure have some way to play these games. But so
I'm curious if what will be a good experience for Spider-Man 2, because I think it benefits so much hardware wise from the PS5's SSD and that really fast memory they have in there, and the pairing. Insomniac seems to have that unlocked with the fast travel and the speed of travel.
Fast traveling, right? Yeah.
So you open the menu, like the map, you click a spot and you go there, and you have to hold the button, and it's like a 1 to 2 second hold, if that. But the devs did come out and say, like, no, literally we could get rid of that, but that's like for UI experience. You hold the button to confirm you're going there, and you're there. Literally, the map zooms. You're like on a digital map, right? Like an overview. And then it zooms in and you're flying in, and all of a sudden you're swinging. It's incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It's just like even right to kick off the gen, right? Like they came out with Ratchet and Clank, and they seem to have like a grasp on what the capabilities of having that, like what the benefits of that SSD really provide, and really just kind of became the masters of manipulating that, right?
Yep.
That's
so to my point though, I don't know if you'll get the same experience on the Steam Deck. That doesn't mean it's like going to be that, super bad or worse. It's just, I know the best way to play this right now is probably PS5, just given the optimization and stuff that they've done with the hardware. Speaking to the story thing, for you or people that play like you, I would probably recommend just playing Spider-Man 2 then. Get the story beats caught up. For me, someone so much more invested in the stories generally, and I love Spider-Man. And Spider-Man is so much about, obviously, responsibility, right? To be Spider-Man and living two lives, and how do you balance being a hero and a good person, but also being a good friend, boyfriend, nephew, whatever. And it's about loss, and there's a lot of loss in the first two games that play out in this game. And so there's so much more weight and value in those emotional beats in the second story. So it's much
really
more rewarding.
immersing yourself in that experience. Yeah. So more than just like the high flying, fast paced action, like enjoying that, right? Which is top notch, but also the story for you is like just, and really the world build around it and stuff. I do like world building. I don't know what separates me like from story, from world building and stuff, but like getting it going, like I love to talk to like any NPC and things like that. So, that's and really, I could probably enjoy all three of these games in about the same amount of time it took me to beat Eastward, right? So,
so I can't unfortunately give this a tier rating yet. I am so close. I'm on the final mission. I got to a point where it's like, hey, you can't go back after this thing for now. So are you ready? And I said yes, and so I'm on that. But if I had to give my impressions, this is easily A tier game. I don't know if I can say S tier. I've really tried to reserve that for like some of the greatest games of all time. Super biased because I love Spider-Man, like huge homer for Spider-Man, right? So that could push me more towards the S tier, but incredible A tier game, very few shortcomings, tons of improvements, amazing story, amazing graphics. Oh, also really quick, super awesome use of the DualSense controller. The rumble type stuff that you do this, some of the puzzle games. There's a lot of like mini games and puzzles in these Spider-Man games, and some are better than others, but great use of the triggers. And I'm not a huge fan of the speaker on the controller generally. Like on paper, I'm like, how does that help? But when you're playing and you get a company that does it right, like Insomniac, it's like surround sound almost, because it just adds that atmosphere. So like you're fighting and like Venom's growling out of the speaker, you know what I mean? While you hear the fighting noises going on, or the web thwips are coming out of the speaker, and like you're like, yeah, I'm really doing this. It's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, no, that's neat. When I think of like a controller speaker, I just like, I don't know if the Wii was the first one to do it, but that's like that, like that's what I think of, or like playing Wii Sports, like, and honestly, like I felt like that added to the experience. Like that's such an iconic like memory for me, or iconic memory for me. I don't know, but anyway, I feel like that's such a notable like thing from the Wii and stuff, having that. So that's interesting. I think it's cool. I think adding stuff like that, I love kind of like quirks and stuff. They talk about like Nintendo talks. There's always that conversation around Nintendo and their gimmicks and stuff like that. And it's just like PlayStation kind of subtly adds a lot of that stuff too. Like at some point, right? They had the 6-axis controller even at the PS3, and like so they slowly start adding things, but they seem to add it in a more subtle way and kind of like in almost a more intelligent way. Like, it's just like, let's not like, we're not going to put all our eggs in this basket, right? Like the Wii was just all about,
risk adverse, right?
Yeah. And sometimes I feel like it just pans out to do really well for them, especially when implemented correctly.
Yep.
So
does that wrap up everything we've been playing? I think. Yeah.
I think so, and we'll probably be talking to at least about a couple of games you've been playing here in a little bit, and then we can move on to that would have been a great transition from Spider-Man 2, the Game of the Year nominees, but instead we're going to transition to Xbox Partner Preview, which is totally related to Spider-Man 2, right?
Yeah.
So no. Yeah, so we had Xbox had a third party partner preview earlier this week, or once this episode airs, about a week ago, where we got. I'm just going to go through the list of games here, and then we'll kind of talk about anything that's notable to us. But in order of how they were shown, we had Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, Icaro Will Not Die, Still Wakes the Deep, RoboCop Rogue City. Dungeons of Hinterberg, Spirit of the North 2, Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, The Finals, Manor Lords, Ark Survival Ascended, and Alan Wake 2.
Yep.
So, Mark, I'm going to go ahead and ask you, if there were any standouts there for you. I know there's at least one.
Yeah.
That we've mentioned on here a couple times. So, what did you think of the showcase? Was there anything that took away that you just like maybe weren't as excited about? And now you're like, oh, maybe I am a little more excited about, and then just really overall takeaway from it.
Yeah. So short, sweet event, very to the point, no like narrator or anything like that. So it's like, hey, here's games, here's trailers, get excited, right? What jumped out to me, the Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, that kind of got me a little more interested. I'm like, oh, okay, this is looking pretty legit. The Finals, watched that trailer, and I'm like, okay, I kind of see what they're going for here. This could be interesting. So it's a, like arena shooter in a way, but the level's destructible, right? So you're trying to collect money and stuff against other players competitively shooting and platforming around, but you can destroy the level as well. Alan Wake 2, of course, I think is a standout, and I think that's what you were hinting at, right? That we've been talking about for a while.
Absolutely.
So looked incredible. Definitely want to pick that up. And then Ark Survival Ascended, guilty pleasure. Like I know, if you've played the Ark series, you've taken so much abuse from these devs in this unoptimized game, but the concept and the gameplay is so good, and the memories you have with your friends. But now they're doing this remaster of a not so old game by porting it from Unreal Engine 4 to Unreal Engine 5, and who knows if it's going to be buggy or not. I think it's on PC right now in early access for this project, and I've heard it's still kind of buggy. So not much hope on Xbox, but maybe, I don't know, maybe it'll get better. I'm like so close to diving back in. I don't know.
Yeah, they need to ascend to a polished game, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then Still Wakes the Deep jumped out at me too, especially because it's going to be on Game Pass. And actually 3 of these were going to be on Game Pass, right? Which ones were those?
Yeah. So that's a good point. So Still Wakes the Deep, Dungeons of Hinterberg, and Manor Lords.
Yeah, Manor Lords. Yeah.
Are those games?
Yeah.
So.
So I'm gonna flip the question right back to you. What jumped out at you? What maybe surprised you, and what are you excited about?
Yeah, so when it comes to Xbox games, again, like the Game Pass drops are huge for me, because this is like, all right, well, I can definitely, like, there's no risk in trying that out. I can download it and play it. The risk is like, what do I have to delete? Or whatever. The only contemplation is, what do I have to, is clearing that space on my Xbox, which I just did with Titanfall 2. So,
the only risk is that you get pulled into a 30-hour game that you hate the combat of.
that's a good point. But so maybe Dungeons of Hinterberg will be that. But because that one stuck out to me. It's this like action RPG, kind of Zelda-like. Has some Zelda-like puzzles. The combat is in like it's action-based combat, but it's like you're locked into like the ring kind of thing. Like the world kind of isolates itself around the battle, like in something like Hi-Fi Rush. I think Devil May Cry does the same thing. That type of action-based combat. But it looks like the art style is kind of cool, unique. It's kind of like a cell shaded, but like also like I don't want to say drawing or colorful, but it's a cool looking world. And the setting itself too also looks pretty neat to me. Icaro Will Not Die. That looks like this like high, fast paced action. Like the soundtrack sounds, at least from that trailer, the music was awesome, right? Like very like what's the genre of that music? Like electronic, like but like anyway,
like a dubstep EDM type.
Yeah. So somewhere in there, right? And it kind of like makes me I don't know, like this, like it's some kind of platforming, right? Like or at least the movement is this fast pace. You're jumping up, you're double jumping, you're jump dashing, you're doing all this stuff, and like to me like that, I don't know, that looked like some fun, just fast paced action that I wish was coming to Game Pass. So we'll see as we get closer to it. And it feels like a game that would be, fit right into that Game Pass lineup, right? Like games that are like, oh, this looks really cool. I'd love to try this out to see if it's for me. Like those to me, that's where Game Pass shines, is like, and then that's how games get like highlighted, right? That like that's how you get these gems that it's like, they might not have done well because people are not so sure if they want to spend money on it. But if it's already included with the subscription they pay for, they're like, why wouldn't I try this? And boom, oh my gosh, this is an amazing game. And then it
blows up.
That's right. And that's generally, I think, where like developers will see more sales come from a game because of Game Pass, as opposed to where like Game Pass can sometimes cannibalize sales.
I'm so glad you mentioned that one. I didn't want to steal your thunder. I was also excited about that one.
Good. That looks so cool. Infinite Wealth looked like that, like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. I've never jumped into these Yakuza games, but they just keep doing like these wild things. I'm like, at some point, am I gonna jump into one of these? This look like this crazy wild spin on Animal Crossing. Like, like at one point in the trailer, he like has a bug net and he catches a beetle and he holds it up and it just totally like takes you right and back to Animal Crossing. Yeah. You're like, this is so jarring. It's kind of hilarious. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, people seem to be love the franchise or that IP and stuff. So, I mean, RoboCop. Honestly, like that to me looks like this just like fun. Like, I don't know if old school's the right way, but like, it's like this movie or TV tie-in like game and it just like you just look like this like just sick, like awesome, like you're RoboCop and you're just going and just blazing dudes, right?
You're
like
this
it just
unstoppable
looks like silly
force, right? Yeah. It looks like a solid like 7 out of 10 game. It does look pretty good.
Right. And it's just like, all right, I can jump in this for a few hours and have fun, right? If it draws out to 35 hours in the something where it's like stays. You don't want that one to overstay its welcome. Yeah. The finals. So like it's funny, like I feel like I've been seeing on like Reddit and like in the conversation like around the industry and stuff, like what has happened to destructible environments, right? Like Crackdown 3 was supposed to use the cloud and bring these destructible environments, and we have like the most power we've ever had in video games, and like nobody does destructible environments anymore. And it's just like it seemed like it was hard on processing and stuff, and it's like we have power now, why aren't we doing like you hear games like Red Faction get brought up and things like that, right? And then like like the
Battlefield people, 3 Levolution and all that, or Bad Company.
Exactly. And then the finals kind of like just shows up. I didn't know anything about this game. Same. And honestly, I'm watching the trailer and I was like, the finals for what game? What game is this? This isn't Valorant. This isn't, I'm like, I'm thinking like esports finals, like the finals. I was thinking it was an event, and I was just like trying to figure out, I was like, what is, and I was like, oh no, this is the game, the finals. And again, as you start seeing the destructible environments, it's like this definitely isn't one of these games, but it looked pretty cool. I don't know if the beta is still going on or not, but it's just like that's definitely something I'll keep my eye on. And I mean, I think it's free to play, and I'll at least try it out. As long as it seems like people are enjoying it. It's something cool, something different, a little bit different, right, than that we've seen in the shooter genre. And it just like the shooter genre can start to feel so samey so fast, right? Like it's like you get innovation now and then like the moment you get any kind of like innovation that grabs on, everybody just everybody just goes right to it, and it's just like, all right, now it's saturated. Like it went from like, oh, cool idea to like completely saturated market. Your battle royale, and I would guess the extraction shooter is going to go through this, right? Like even the games as a service as a whole, right? Like it's just like it went from but maybe this is the next one. It's like, but I mean, enjoy it while it's before it just feels like it's too much. And then Alan Wake 2 to me was like a game, like I was just like, again, like John, the survival horror genre, not always been a genre for me, but watching that trailer and then seeing like reviews are coming out, it's like in the 90s, high 80s, low 90s for Metacritic, and I'm just like, my goodness, just another one. Like we had Super Mario Wonder, Spider-Man 2, and Alan Wake 2 all coming out with like a week and a half of each other or whatever, and just like and it's like the game of the year discussion, it just went from insane to more insane. Like how like what else is going to come out like this year that it's just like, but no, it looked really good, and I'm just like, oh man, do I want to jump into this? I don't know. So
Right. Yeah, and it's making some PCs scream, I've heard, graphically.
Oh yeah.
Um in a good way, right? And the PS5 version, Digital Foundry reviewed it and said, "Hey, in terms of a console version, this is actually performs really well between, either the performance or the quality modes. Um
hmm
Still looks just as good as on the PC, not ultra settings, but in that medium to high area." So, yeah. Overall, I thought the event was pretty good. If you can call it an event, I mean, it's just a
Right.
partner preview with some trailers, but
I think
it's good.
I think they set the expectations well, right? Like oftentimes I feel like Xbox has had issues in the past, and with certain people, I don't know, Aaron Greenberg maybe, I don't know, but like they'll hype up an event to be like, oh my gosh, it's gonna be so amazing, so amazing, so amazing. You get there and it's like, well, it was good, it was okay, it was not good at
Yeah.
all, and it's just like this. They're like, hey, we're gonna have, we're gonna just. They're not calling it a showcase. They weren't calling it. They're just like, here's a preview of some of our third-party partner, games, what they have to offer, right? They didn't set this high expectation, so they set the expectations right where they needed to be. And I think the only thing out of that I would have liked to have seen would have been like, one last thing is the Baldur's Gate coming, next week or something.
Yeah.
But Alan Wake was a great way to close it, and yeah, I was pretty happy with it.
Yeah, they did like the trailer and then a actual gameplay of that.
Yeah,
so.
the format was good too. Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of fluff, right? It was just kind of trailer after trailer. They hit like a couple points throughout the video or the event that they just they recapped what they've gone over, which is kind of neat. And yeah, but yeah, so we'll kind of move on from that, and as we were just talking about Alan Wake 2, we've talked about Spider-Man 2, we've talked about Super Mario Wonder, which have all found their ways into the conversation that is going to be ramping up here probably over the next month.
Yep.
The game of the year.
Yep.
So yeah, I think what we'll start with is just like, Mark, I'm going to ask you, what do you think is just like no brainer, the easiest, like these are absolute guarantees. There's no question they're going to be in there. Do you have any
in the nominees?
In the nominees for Game of the Year?
Shoe-ins for in the nominee: Baldur's Gate, Tears of the Kingdom, Spider-Man 2, Mario Wonder, and then
Okay, so you think there's no chance those miss?
those are in the nominees.
Okay,
Yep.
all right.
What
Yeah,
about you?
Yeah, so Baldur's Gate, Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, they've been front runners since they've released. I think Spider-Man 2. There's no chance that misses. Yeah, Mario Wonder. We'll talk about it in a minute. I don't know that I call that an absolute lock. I want to just like there's no nobody's going to be saying, oh, that shouldn't be in there to me, and like I could see people saying, no, that shouldn't be in there.
Okay.
Yeah, but
What else you got?
I think that is
That's
those
your
are my
for your
three.
shoe-ins?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I gotta leave some room for discussion for the other 10 games that might be in.
Yeah. Man, I kind of RE4 remakes on the edge for me that I think it might be in there. Like
Really?
almost guaranteed.
Okay.
And so I know it sounds weird. Like I think a lot of people listening to this will be like, no.
Well, you know how I feel about my remakes being in
Yeah,
in a
we'll
Game of the Year
leave that
conversation.
alone.
Yeah. But having said that, it will probably be in my conversation here just because I'm not the one that's making the decision on what's in this.
Yeah.
But,
Do you want to run down your list for just contenders? Do you have a list?
Yeah,
together?
yeah. So I think the games that will be kind of like thrown out there in the conversation here. Obviously, like we said, Baldur's Gate, Tears of the Kingdom, Spider-Man. We just mentioned Alan Wake 2.
Yep.
That I think that
I thought that was going
like
to
it
be
was
reviewed
against-
lower. I thought it was going to be reviewed
Yeah.
lower. Did you?
Yeah. I kind of expected like, I don't know, maybe mid 80s or something like
Yeah,
that.
me
right?
too.
Like it sounded like it was going to be good, maybe a little bit above that, but like, yeah, it hit that 90 mark or whatever. At least it was at 90s, somewhere in the low 90s for at least a period. Was pretty shocked to see that, and I was like, oh man, this just
Another
throws
one.
it into the a lot more into the conversation. Yeah, like, Starfield. I mean, it's at least going to be talked about. That's probably going to be the most. is divisive the right word? You know, like the most like controversial or whatever. I think one like because it just seems like it has so much back and forth conversation. You see, I got one glove here and one not, but lost the glove. But anyway,
Yeah, man, I agree with you on Starfield. I'm gonna say, all right, let's do this right now. Is it in the nominees or not?
yes.
I'm also gonna say yes, but I don't think it should be.
Oh
Yeah. By the way, really quick, Alan Wake 2, 89 on Metacritic with like almost
okay,
50
so it did
reviews,
drop
so.
just under 90. Okay,
Yep.
I know it started out there, and it like those things go up and down, you know, after a few days or whatever. So,
Yep.
yeah, golly, yeah. So Resident Evil 4 is another one. Jedi Survivor, Final Fantasy 16.
I forgot to put Jedi Survivor on my list, man.
Yeah, I mean, Dead Space just dropped on Game Pass. Yeah, I think if there's going to be a remake in there, it's going to be Resident Evil,
or Metroid.
Yeah, that's the remaster, right?
Well,
so
yeah,
like, I think that makes less of a case for me. It definitely makes less of a case, even.
Right.
But,
right.
But that it did review well. It was like in the 90s. Again, another game in the 90s this year. But Mario Wonder is a contender. Obviously, I didn't say it was a lock for me. Go ahead.
Sorry, no, I'm not going to interrupt your list. I'm checking things off my list that you've said and see if we have any differences.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And yeah, I think. Okay, I'm gonna ask: do you think Diablo 4 is even in the conversation now? Or do you think that stands?
It's not anymore.
Okay,
that's not. I do have it written down as like as the breadth of how good the games are this year, but it's like in the bottom of the barrel of the top games.
Do you think Cyberpunk has a chance? You know, it's not a new game.
It's gonna go to expansion. I think. I don't think they'll even bring it up. Do you?
Yeah, because I hope not. I really hope not. I think Resident Evil, a remake, is more deserving of a spot on the Game of the Year discussion
than game.
A patched game with an expansion, right? Like, and like they talk Phantom Liberty is being talked about like it's the amount of because the CD Projekt Red is like it's an expansion, not just DLC. It's an expansion, right?
Yes,
and then it's it's talked about like there's so much content in there. It could almost be its own game in itself, but and like people are like, oh, this should be because and I'm like I don't know how you like this. How can it be Game of the Year? It came out in 2023. I'm sorry, how can it be Game of the Year in 2023 when it came out in 2020, right? And it's just like that just to me it really doesn't make sense because it's not even a remake or a remaster.
I'd lean more if it was a remake.
It's not a re-release, right? Like it's.
And I get that, like, for the people that have been playing it, I haven't dove back in, but
do you think it could be best ongoing game?
Oh,
right. Like when you think of best ongoing game, you usually think like live service. You think of like a shooter, like like a shooter or
no,
like an MMO.
I don't think they'll put it in that category. I think it's deserving of something. I don't know, best turnaround. I would hate to start that trend. That's a bad trend to start. Best turnaround game. It encourages people to release crappy games and then turn it around.
Release crappy games just to turn it around. Yeah.
All right. What else is in there for you? Anything? You're missing a big one.
Oh man! All right, what am I missing?
A big little one. Sea of Stars. I think this is going to be in the conversation.
So there's probably 3 indies I think that will at least be talked about. We'll get to indie game of the year. The Keelers will have an indie game of the year, which I think Sea of Stars, Dave the Diver, Cocoon.
That's fair.
Are probably the 3 big ones, right? And Dredge came out this year, right?
Oh,
I see Dredge. Maybe not. If Dredge came out this year, you definitely see that talked about as well. Which I mean, it's just wild to think. Even the indie games, there's some pretty big hitters this year that are talked about. But yeah, I think the standout indie this year, like if you have to pick one standout indie, Sea of Stars is the one, and that's probably a game actually I'm gonna jump into now that I'm done with Eastward. And I expect to enjoy that.
Dredge,
more
I think it was this year.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, there's a pretty good indie conversation. I think you're right. I think if there's one that's going to be in that conversation, oftentimes we like to see, or like the Game Awards likes to have that one indie that's in the nominations. If there's a year that the indie misses, this is the year because there's just so many other huge big hitters.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's a good one. Wow. Yeah.
The Street Fighter 6 was also this year or no? It was also
Yep. Street Fighter 6. Yeah, like it's kind of like that niche game, but like it's kind of it definitely gets talked about a lot, right? Like if there's one to break out, like that'll be the one. Yeah. And some people are calling it, this is my game of the year, and like I'm sure we'll probably see it come out on some game of the year, probably like more Eastern focused, like game of the year, or outlets will might call it that, right? So
right.
Yeah. All right. So now, did you have any more you wanted to throw in there?
No, I think we covered them all. So what I wrote down was Baldur's Gate, Tears of the Kingdom, Sea of Stars, Mario Wonder, Spider-Man 2, Alan Wake 2, Diablo 4, RE4 Remake, Metroid Prime Remastered, Street Fighter 6.
Yeah. All right. So what are your 6?
You want me to tell you the 6 nominees?
All right. So you've said that absolutely we have Tears of the Kingdom, Baldur's Gate.
Yep.
Mario Wonder, and Spider-Man, Mario Wonder and Spider-Man 2. So you've got two left.
More. Yep, I got 2 left. Well, that makes it easier. No.
Yeah. Or does it?
Yeah. I'm going to put Sea of Stars in there.
And then you said Starfield makes it, right?
Yeah.
You still hold on to that?
I'll put Starfield in there. I'll stand behind my word. I'll put so here
but
we go.
It doesn't deserve it.
I don't think it does. And we can dive into that later in another episode.
Just haven't played enough. The tagline for Starfield, you just haven't played enough.
That's it. Todd's gonna come say on stage. So Baldur's Gate 3, Tears of the Kingdom, Sea of Stars, Mario Wonder, Starfield, and Spider-Man 2. That's my 6. That's what I think.
All right.
There.
Okay. Great.
I'm circling those now so I can come back
list. To this. It's funny. I mean, Starfield's a game I played to beat this year, so it's just like, surely I think it's like I'm gonna have stronger feelings and thoughts about it than games I haven't played. But I still think the conversation. I mean, with how well Spider-Man scored and the conversation around it, it's the big hitter from PlayStation. Absolutely going to be there. And again, Baldur's Gate is like, I think Baldur's Gate. Well, we'll talk about it. Yeah. So yeah, oh man, I think Mario Wonder is going to be in there as well.
Okay.
Like I don't know that it's necessarily a lock. I just think that it's reviewed well enough. People are loving it. People are so excited. The conversation is like there's just 2D Mario has excitement for the first time in a long time. And it's Nintendo, right? Like Nintendo kind of gets so that leaves me, and then I said Starfield would be in it. So I have one game left to put in there. Whew. I think it's going to be. I was gonna say I was just about to list my contenders again because I think it's gonna be between Final Fantasy and Jedi Survivor, and then I was like, or Street Fighter 6, or or Resident Evil 4. I'm like, oh crap.
I played and beat Survivor. It could definitely be in there, but it's the bottom.
I'm gonna knock that one out. Yep.
Okay.
So we've got Resident Evil 4, we've got Street Fighter 6, we've got Final Fantasy. I'm gonna go. I hate to say this, Resident Evil 4, but I don't think it deserves it.
Whoa. Okay.
So this is my think it's going to be there, but doesn't deserve it simply because it's a remake. Yeah. And that's my prediction. So.
Okay. So list the 6 again. List the 6 again.
Yep. Baldur's Gate, Tears of the Kingdom, Spider-Man 2, Mario Wonder, Starfield, and Resident Evil 4 remake.
Okay. So we differed on Sea of Stars for RE4 remake.
Yep. Okay. And if you're listening, join the Discord if you haven't already, and give us your thoughts on on the game of the year here, and what's going to be coming. This week's going to ramp up over the next few, or this conversation is going to ramp up over the next few weeks, and really, like the beginning of, I think, first, second week of December there is when the awards are. So those nominations come out in mid-November. So yeah, really exciting. But
speaking of the Discord, somebody just tagged us. Actually, we can't look right now. We're recording, but we see you and we appreciate you. We'll be there to talk in a minute.
But yeah, so
the final question,
the
game of the year. Pause for dramatic effect. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
My game of the year.
So not my game of the year. What do you think it is? What do you think it's going to be?
What do I want to say or what I think it's going to be?
That's fair. So do what you think it's going to be and then say what your personal game of the year is.
So I think Baldur's Gate Baldur's Gate has it.
Okay.
It's being talked about still more than Tears of the Kingdom. Obviously, it came out a couple months after Tears of the Kingdom, so it's like, and that isn't the only part of the conversation. But I think that there's an opinion out there, an inaccurate opinion. Mm-hmm. No, I'm gonna say, but just kidding. But that Tears of the Kingdom was more of the same, and it wasn't like it didn't do enough new. Like, to me, there was a lot of the same, but there was just a lot. Period, and there was more added that still. Rose it to at least the game of the year contender. But I haven't played Baldur's Gate, so it's like for me to have a strong opinion on it either way. Maybe when I play it, I'll feel differently. But and it's also I definitely have a heavy bias towards Zelda games, right? So
yep.
But I do towards Bethesda games, and I think Starfield is a great game, but it doesn't. I mean, even just looking at and seeing like the how polished some of these other games are and how much like more they have into it, and after playing but with Starfield, I think it's a really good game. I think to me it's just like it falls short of other Bethesda games, and it's like when I really wanted to step forward, it does in some ways, especially in the quests and the missions and things like that, or the storytelling, but it also took steps back in a time where like in ways that you would expect that like, no, this was just like it feels almost less modern. Like some of the old, like Fallout 4 in some ways feels more modern than Starfield. And
yeah, it feels like game of the year from 10 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. That's the best way.
But I feel better about the game than I think a lot of people do. So,
yeah.
But I also feel worse than some people do. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
okay. So you're saying Baldur's Gate 3 is going to win, but your personal game of the year is Tears of the Kingdom. So you'd be happy if that won.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
This one's super easy for me because they're the same answer. It's Baldur's Gate 3. This game is best of the decade so far. I mean, wow. Yeah, it's that good. I've been having conversations with coworkers.
So like best of the last 10 years or best of 2020s?
2020s.
Okay.
You've got some bang up stuff in the 2010s. I'd have to go back and really think about that. I don't want to come off the cuff and just be like, this is the greatest game ever. It's not, but it's quickly climbing the GOAT discussion, right? Or just in that top tier. Yeah, it's so good. At the end of Act 2, I'm making there's these decisions that have so much weight. I actually had to put the controller down and walk away to try and decide what I wanted to do. Because going through all this dialogue, and they're like, the guy's just like point blank, no, you're going to do this or this. Is it a yes or a no right now? And I'm like, it's like trying to buy a house or a car or something. Like, I can't decide this right now. But the way that I'm seeing that they tie things back from the beginning of the game, I mean, it's just a masterful storytelling and gameplay and everything tied together. I don't see how this doesn't win. And I think, I'm not a conspiracy guy, but it's rigged if this thing doesn't win. I mean, it's that good. And I've played 200 hours of Tears of the Kingdom. And so my personal opinion is also Baldur's Gate, of course.
Wow, that's something, man. I still gotta go finish Tears of the Kingdom, but hopefully I'll be playing Baldur's Gate by the end of the year. So
yeah, do you
maybe
think
I'll start changing my
little Game Awards trailer for the Xbox version?
Larian keeps saying that they're gonna get this game out this year.
Yeah, they
on Xbox.
reiterated that like last week. Like, no, it'll be out before the end of the year.
So I'm like, you'd almost want to see it out by the Game Awards, but by the Game Awards, by the Game Awards. But
what about available now? There's no physical version. You got to remember that.
Right,
no
you could do that
version
because it is digital. Yeah, and it's not like you have to like ramp up marketing for the game. It's already done.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so it's not like it's like, this game's announced and dropped, and like, like, because that's a game that would need a little bit of a lead up to, as opposed to like an indie or something like a Hi-Fi Rush, right? Like, but I don't know. Hopefully, I'm playing by the end of the year. Maybe we get a shadow drop at the Game of the Year awards. That would be cool.
I would think that's kind of. I think a trailer is very, very, very likely, like a Xbox, Baldur's Gate for Xbox.
Yeah, I mean, we gotta hear some. If we don't hear something before the Game Awards,
You're struggling with that. The TGAs.
Yeah. I keep wanting to call it the Game of the Year Awards, and it's the Game Awards. The Game Awards.
The Game of Wars.
So yeah, if we don't hear something by the Game Awards, we will hear something at the Game Awards. I agree with that.
Yeah, so we'll get the
Baldur's Gate.
Get the trailers very likely, I think. Shadow drop less likely, but possible. Game Pass much less likely, but still possible. I know
it was on that leak, right? As like if they had a deal prior to the release of the game, that would be insane. First off, insane value for Xbox to get they talked about like $5 million or whatever to get the game, which makes me feel like I think Larian, while surprised at the success they had, knew that this was going to be a successful game for them, or at least were banking on it being one, right?
They were planning on it from Sven. Sven, is that right? Kind of the director, if you will, or founder of Larian, said that they targeted this to be successful, but this is beyond their wildest dreams of success. They had a frame of reference for success. They needed to know what they needed to do, but this went over the moon and back.
Yeah, I was to say, as much passion and that they put into this game, and much like ambition that they had in this game, it's just like that they had way higher expectations than anybody else did for themselves. So so I'm kind of thinking like Xbox is like, like this would be great to have. We like RPGs on our platform, and like and I kind of feel like Larian's like, no, like you don't understand, this game's gonna be something, and then it came out and they're like, oh, this wasn't just something. This was like this is it. Like this is the game, right? So,
well, that's a huge risk for Xbox, right? We were talking about Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. When did 2 come out? 1998 or something like that? Like a CRPG from a long time ago. So yeah, of course it's on the radar. Like of the property. They made a good game in Divinity, but what is that?
PC RPG,
Yeah, what is that word?
Who on our platform is going to want to play this game that half of our subscribers weren't even born at that point?
Yeah, nobody could have predicted it. Yeah,
right. And it's just like most people, like the mindset going into Baldur's Gate 3 is probably most of the people are obviously going to be older, and most of them are going to want to play on PC if they're even familiar with the IP at all, right?
Yeah.
But that's probably the mindset, but that's not necessarily the case, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's that it's
at this point, I just don't think
wild success.
I don't think it ends up on Game Pass. I think it's just too expensive at this point. Like Larian knows, Xbox knows, like, hey, this thing's going to sell like hotcakes anyway. There's not really a benefit. Like it's going to cost Xbox an exorbitant amount of money.
At least it doesn't. It doesn't launch on Xbox on Game Pass, right? Like,
maybe later.
Maybe you see it down the road. And we've seen Red Dead and GTA 5, so there's a chance to see Baldur's Gate, right, sometime down the road. But it's not like we're not gonna get it day and date.
Yeah, if they would have got it before the blow up, if they would have secured that, it's like getting a guy on his rookie contract if you're talking sports, right? Before he becomes an all-star. But now he's an all-star, there's a hefty price tag.
Yeah, they didn't have to spend all that money and time on acquiring ABK. Larian would have been a perfect fit for them.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So that wraps up our conversation. If you're still here, make sure you hit. You're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe. If you're listening, follow us on wherever you're listening. Give us a like or a review. follow us on or come join our Discord. We have some fun conversation there. We get topic suggestions. I buy games that people tell me to buy there sometimes. So, but they have to be less than $5.
And I just get made fun of. So if you like making fun of people, you go make fun
it's
of me.
great. Yeah, it's really fun to make fun of Mark. So, no, it's a great community there. So come join us at Discord, and yeah, make sure you we're on. Again, YouTube at Remote Play Podcast, and we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you're listening to your podcast, we're going to be there.
Yep.
All right, thanks for joining us. Any last words, Mark?
Let's see Baldur's Gate win this thing.